Okay. Good evening. It is 6:01 p.m. on Thursday, February 7th, and I would like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order and ask that you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. The 8th of February.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The superintendent and the board secretary were tired of me forgetting to read the mission statement, so we added it as an official agenda item, not knowing that I was also going to get the date wrong, so it's fine. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Dr. Buddy, Dr. Cabana,
Present.
Mrs. Lilje, Mr. Lopez, Mrs. Moore,
Present.
Dr. Nevares Martinez,
Present.
Dr. Rodriguez, Ms. Williams, Mrs. Willis.
Present.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. I anticipate that Dr. Body will be joining us, but I did know that Ms. Lilje, Mr. Lopez, and Dr. Rodriguez would be absent this evening. First order of business is to read the district's mission statement, which is a reminder that our mission is to provide a high-quality education in a culturally safe and nurturing environment that supports all students to live purposeful and fulfilling lives. So with that, we will go on in our agenda to see if we have any additions to the agenda, of which we have none. Public comment on agenda items, of which we have none. That brings us to our presentations this evening, which will be an update on our policies that we just reviewed due to the legislative changes by Mr. Sergio Keck.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to make this presentation. This is a brief presentation about the board policies and how they function in our school district. Many board members are already aware of this system, but many people in the public might not know. So this is targeting all of you and the public, hopefully. So we're going to start with the process of policies. State legislators amend the laws. Troon law firm, which many of us know, guide Neola on recommendations for policy revisions. Neola shares these policy recommendations to the policy committee. The policy committee reviews and sends the recommended revisions to the Board of Education for approval. And then the Board of Education reviews and approves the policies. So that's our process. Our policy committee is appointed by the Board of Education with the purpose to review and make recommendations to revise or adapt policies to the Lansing School District Board of Education. And our distinguished members, board members that are part of the policy committee are Dr. Rodriguez, Ms. Moore, Ms. Williams, and Dr. Nevares Martinez. I would really appreciate their time and effort that they put into it. And I know that Dr. Kavanaugh also was part of it last year, so everybody had a little piece of the policy committee. Neola. Neola is the company that currently manages our policies, and they provide guidance to the policy committee. Now, Troon, which is our law firm, they provide the guidance to Neola, that then they come and they provide the guidance to us. And Troon also manages its own educational policies. So all these are the players before the Board of Education approves the policies. So the changes that occur in the fall of 2023 were in the Michigan Public Employment Relations Act, the State School Aid Act, the Revised School Code, and the Teacher's Tenure Act. When those acts were amended, there were some major topics that were addressed in them. The first one is the mandatory and prohibited collective bargaining subjects, teacher and administrator evaluations, performance-based compensation, teacher termination, non-renewal of administrators, and effective on February 2013, we have the Michigan Public Employment Relations Act that tell us that we'll no longer prohibit these topics from bargaining or during bargaining. Teacher placement, teacher layoff and recall, teacher administrative evaluations, teacher discharge and discipline, merit pay, third-party contracting of non-instructional services. All of these topics are now can be used during bargaining between the Board of Education and our bargaining units. Also, it removed the prohibition on collecting dues for the unions. And they have deleted something that means entering into governmental agreements to consolidate services is no longer a prohibited bargaining subject. So that's one act. Effective July 1, the revised school code was amended that modified the factors that school officials must consider when making personnel decisions. It also impacts the teacher and administrative evaluations and establishes deadlines, timelines. It tells us that an employee has to have a written notification at least 90 days before the employment contract terminates, and that within 60 days before the contract terminates, the whole deal has to be done and completed. So all that stuff that was changed in the acts impacted 10 board policies that were brought to our attention and approved by you guys last week. So, very briefly, I'm just going to show one by one some of the things that changed from the past. Policy 0122, board powers. This policy removes the topics that are no longer prohibited subjects anymore. 15 of those subjects were removed from this policy. Policy 1420. Beginning next school year, 20% of the annual evaluation must be based on student growth. And it also changed the evaluation rates from highly effective, effective, minimally effective, to effective, developing, or ineffective. Of course, there has been no guidance given to us yet, but these are policies that have been changed and impacted. Also, there are minor edits in these policies, and I give you an example right there, how they cross some language, they add some new words. But when you see that a policy has minor edits, that's basically what it is. Policy 3131, no longer a prohibited subject of bargaining, and minor edits. 3142, provisionary teachers. So if a teacher is effective or highly effective on 3 consecutive years and completed 4 years in the school district, then the teacher is considered to have successfully completed the provisionary period. I believe right now it's 5 years, so that's the change. The professional staff evaluation also tells us that 20% of the year and evaluation data must be based on student growth and assessment. The other policy that we revised, employment of professional staff, there were some minor edits. The staff discipline, teacher discipline and discharge is no longer a prohibited subject of bargaining. Policy 3130, assignment and transfer, Teacher placement is no longer a prohibited subject of bargaining. 3132 vacancies, they revised the definition of a vacancy. And the last one, which is 3140, the termination and resignation, they have some little minor edits. All these resources, informations were used through the Neola and Thrum law firm memos and manuals, and all that information was studied to be able to present to you the policies last week. Personally, I'd like to thank all the board members who are part of this. I'd like to also thank Ms. Claudia for being part of this. And we look forward to staff to, if they ever have a question or an opportunity of making revising or adoptions of new policies, to come to the policy committee. We will discuss them, we will review them, and then we'll make a determination. But this is a quick presentation, a really, really interesting topic. And I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, myself or Mr. Schulderner, we would be more than happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keck. Any questions from colleagues this evening? I'll just make this comment. I know there was a lot of confusion because we said a lot of things last week. One of the things that is, just to point out, the board had a policy that was called Board Powers, which is policy 0122. And in that policy, it's had a list of items that the board has authority based on statute to make decisions regarding. And because the statute changed, the board no longer has to make those, no longer is able to make some of those decisions. Those decisions have to be bargained. So in a roundabout way, the board does accept those conditions because they would be a condition of an employment contract, which we would approve. But it's not based on a policy, it's based on the bargaining between the district and any of our, which is essentially the board and any of our union partners. So what we were doing was making it clear that those items are no longer dictated by policy, but are rather have to follow the school code. So I just want to make sure that that was clear why we amended the policies the way we did. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Oh,
before we move-
sure
Yeah,
thing.
so as being part of the policy committee, I also wanted to point out that the changes had to be made, right? We didn't really have an option because it's based on law. So wanted to clarify that as well, because I know that maybe some folks were confused as to why we made the changes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, that brings us on in our agenda. Our next item is our update from Superintendent, Mr. Schuldener.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for that. I want to thank Sergio for that great presentation and to reiterate some of the things that were said by the board. You know, with policies, those are the rules that govern how we run this school district. But as Sergio said, on the top of the pyramid are the people about 3 blocks down the street. And so when state law changes, we have to change. That's just kind of the deal. And in a show of how actually well this board functions, unlike some other districts in the state and in the country, we were able to kind of move quickly to follow the law so that we are then in good stead. Now, what's really interesting from me being kind of not from Michigan is I was always kind of shocked that these were things that were not negotiable anyway. In almost every other school district in the country, these kinds of topics were always bargainable, right? And so the fact that these are changing, I don't want anybody to think like this is going to be somehow scary or problematic. If anything, it just means that management and labor get to have a full discourse about all the topics that impact our schools, which is important because, I think that, the president of LSEA and the president of LASA and all of our, and LEA, all of our, and CCLPI and Meet and Confer and, LAES, we have 6 bargaining units. They all have presidents. They're all terrific. By now, us being able to negotiate things, it's actually, in some respects, better for us because it allows us to have a fuller picture. The other thing that you might have mentioned or might have seen is that the State House did also change some of the rules on how you evaluate teachers. Again, that's not something we can do if the state says otherwise. And so the way that teachers used to be evaluated was on basically a 4-point scale. It's now going to be a 3-point scale. Tenure laws used to be 5 years. Now it's 4 years. The rule about being evaluated on test scores or student achievement, now it is 20%. These are things that are being legislated by the wonderful people that work 3 blocks from here, and we as a school district, who is an LEA, a local education authority, have to follow those rules. And so I'm very appreciative that I get to work for a board that understands this and is able to move quickly when we legally have to, because one of the hard things is sometimes is when this stuff doesn't happen and your policies as a school district don't fit the state law, you can get into a lot of trouble. And so, but I do want to make mention what Sergio shared is that, you've got your state laws on top, then you've got Neola, which is the organization that helps us with our board policies, and then you have Troon, which is our law firm that also helps. These are things that are certainly dictated by state law. But I want anybody listening, certainly in the audience, on the board, or at home, is that doesn't mean those are the only policies. We, as a LEA, have authority over a lot of things. Now, I'm not saying that this board should make a board policy that every child gets a pony, but you could, in fact, have certain rules and regulations. And I think what would be really interesting is that now that we're getting more used to these kinds of conversations and these kinds of activities, we can look even deeper into our current policies that are not mandated by the people 3 blocks down, but the ones that we've created so that we can maybe tweak them. Because, look, things change. A lot of the policies that we have here, I'm sure, were written in the 80s or in the 70s, and so you're maybe even whenever, is that it allows us to really reevaluate that. And I welcome this, and I have to really mention that I was very appreciative of community comment last week about wanting to share these things. And so that's why Sergio did the presentation, because the board asked and the community asked, let's have that dialogue, right? These are the kinds of things that I think make a school district very powerful and good. Other things, of course, I'm going to read the gas cards, catech cards, and Dean. Things are actually getting a little better, which is nice. There's only one person waiting for their catech cards. 769 families have catech cards. The gas cards are up to 2,723. 17 are waiting. We're going to be processing those quickly. And we have 3,696 kids on Dean, with 106 kind of on the wait list, which, again, these numbers are much lower than they were at the beginning of the year, but we are still struggling, right? I mean, I read these numbers not because we want accolades, it's because we want to acknowledge that we haven't kind of finished the compact that we have with our families. Now, I will say one of the things that we have been talking about for many years is that we do have 3 wonderful kind of district-wide programs, Post Oak and Wexford and Luton, but, the more that we really think about families going to school in their neighborhood, that addresses some of the transportation issues as well. And so we've started to see, because we are getting our schools to be better, and we want all 25 of our schools to be amazing, there's starting to be a sense from our families that sending your kid down the block is actually a good thing, rather than because that's a school that they didn't want to go to. So we are addressing these kinds of transportation issues as much as we can, and certainly we look forward to being in a place where we'll have 0 kids on any wait list, because we want those kids, of course, to go to school. That being said, a lot of stuff is happening in the school districts. The numbers that we're really waiting on are the graduation numbers, which should be released by the end of the month. We're really excited about what is going to show for those, but we have been really impressed with our attendance numbers are going up as well. And then the last thing I'd really say is that the one place that we're really, there's a lot of places we need to get better, don't get me wrong, but one place that we're really still struggling, as many school districts are, is still with hiring. So if anybody kind of listening, please send people our way. We just did some interviews for a position, and what's fascinating, of course, is that there were lots of people that interviewed, and some people maybe hit the mark for that job, but other people hit the mark for other jobs. And so, we know sometimes people think, well, the only job a school district has is a teacher. Well, it's not true, right? We have 1,500 plus employees that do a myriad of things. So if there are people that are really interested in working for the school district, we're really open and welcome to have an interview, have a conversation, and see maybe there's a good fit. It doesn't necessarily have to be third grade. It could be a lot of other things. So that being said, I do want to keep it brief because we have a really wonderful Did You Know today, and I see a wonderful member of the audience who you'll see on screen in a little bit, and maybe Jenna and Ryan can introduce her after the video. So here is the Did You Know for this week.
How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
Aluminum linoleum 3 times.
Aluminum linoleum, aluminum linoleum, aluminum linoleum.
I love being able to take my personal experiences and throw it all out on the stage.
I like being able to just perform and change who I am for an audience, and I especially love it if the audience is enjoying it.
It encouraged me to step out of the box and do something different because I usually just stay to myself. It encourages me to make new friends, and I really love building set.
And I won't get the heebie-jeebies.
We started this play back in December. After the winter break, we come back, we have 2 weeks, and very quickly we go to the district competition. Traveled over to Chesaning and competed at districts. After that, we got to go to St. John's for the regional competition.
They'll put you in jail, mister, for making that poor abused boy walk while you ride high and mighty on your mule. Donkey, who asked you?
At that point, 2 go on automatically to states, and then they have wild cards where they look at all of the contestants across the state, and we earned one of the wild card positions. So that means in 2 weeks, we are going to go compete at Wayne State University at the state theater competition.
It's kind of crazy because for the wild card, I didn't think that we were gonna do states, and then I got the text message and I was like, oh my gosh. It was very exciting.
We rehearsed 5 days a week for 3 hours every day after school. So that was all of December and January, and now most of February will be dedicated to the show. And while we are busy rehearsing on stage, we have 4 directors who are working in the tech booth helping figure out all of the lighting and sound. We have a director backstage in our scene shop building and painting all of the sets with students, so we have a crew that does that. And then we have 2 directors who've been doing house and publicity and all of our costumes and props. And all of those are student-led, but we have teachers there to kind of help out and keep things organized. We encourage absolutely everybody to participate. So one of the big things when I took over was to make sure that we include every student in the school. So we have students from every diverse background possible. We have students from our special education program, and from every vantage point imaginable, because we want to make sure that this is a very inclusive program. And so the kids have also worked hard to make sure that they are accepting and bringing in everybody that they can.
So, Jenna and Ryan, if you want to introduce the star of the show, along with her children, Ms. McCampbell.
Yep. Thanks, Ben. Courtney McCampbell is a teacher at Everett, and she is the director for the Viking Theater Guild.
Thank you so much, Ms. McCampbell. Your work is really terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. I know this is not customary, but I have a question. How do you get the set to Wayne State? Does somebody have to take that apart and haul it to Detroit?
Yes, so we load it into a U-Haul truck, and the students do all of the loading. They've helped design it so that it wheels up, and they've now taken it to Chesney and St. John's, and we'll take it to Wayne State. They load and unload everything, so they're amazing.
Thank you. The more you know. That's why it's a Did You Know? Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, so this evening, because we move things around a little bit, we don't have any committee reports. So the first item we have before us is our consent agenda, which is the approval of the February 1st regular meeting minutes. May I have a motion?
Madam President, I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as presented, the approval of the February 1st, 2024 regular business meeting.
It's been moved by Ms. Williams, supported by Ms. Moore. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0. Next this evening, we have our report from Secretary and Announcements. I'm going to ask Ms. Moore to act as our secretary this evening.
Okay, and I shall do just that. Well, once again, we shared last week about Lansing School District is about Black History Month. Well, once again, Lansing School District is celebrating Black History Month. February 14th is Spring Count Day. February 19th is President's Day, no school. February 28th is Parent Community Advisory Council from 6 to 8 at 4200 Wainwright. The next board meetings are February 22nd, and that would be our information study session, and March 7th would be our regular board meeting. Madam President, that concludes the Secretary's report on behalf of Dr. Rodriguez.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Next will be public comment on non-agenda items for which we have no registered public comment this evening. So that brings us to comment from board members. I would like to take a point of privilege during this evening's board member comments and to highlight a local Black history icon for the city of Lansing. And so this evening I would like to raise, honor, and respect Dr. Olivia Letts, who was Lansing's first African-American teacher hired by the Lansing School District in 1951. Dr. Letts graduated from Chicago. It was called Chicago Teachers College, but it's now Chicago State University, where she earned her bachelor's in education. She later went on to Loyola University and then to Michigan State University, where she received 3 advanced degrees, a master's in education and a master's in educational administration and a PhD in curriculum. After being told that the Lansing School District did not want to employ African American teachers, Dr. Letts recruited friends and local citizens to approach the then Board of Education on her behalf and convince them to approve the appointment. So Dr. Letts' legacy certainly lives on in the Lansing community through the Letts Community Center. And I do want to note, I'm reading this from the Michigan Women's Forward Michigan Women's Hall of Fame, where she was inducted prior to her passing at the age of 93 in 2021. So that is my point of privilege for Black History Month.
And thank you for signing. You got it.
Just in case anyone is wondering. Any other questions from board members? All right, thank you for this very Who Runs the World Girls efficient board meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn? It's been moved by Dr. Kavanaugh, supported by Ms. Williams. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0 at 6:30. We are adjourned.